The people in Morton Shallows get what they wanted for Christmas. A double homicide. We're talking Christmas ghost stories.
Unhappy families.
And the proper way to win over your new boss on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me as always is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Eileen, Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, Eric! Ho, ho, ho! Today we are talking about A Christmas Haunting, the first episode of the 16th series. It originally aired December 24th, 2013. It was directed by Nick Laughlin and written by Chris Murray. Let's scare up some holiday cheer.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
I'm on to that, Gov. I'm sure this is the start of a successful working relationship, D.S. Nelson, but it'll go a lot more smoothly if you don't call me Gov. Sir. Right. Shall we?
'Twas a few nights before Christmas, and in Morton Shallows Manor House, a bunch of people were stirring, trying to find proof of a ghost. That's as far as I could get with that. They are all there as part of Fright Night, a ghost hunting party where people spread out through the mansion looking for evidence of the ghost of Little Rose Wilton. According to village folklore, she was the daughter of a blacksmith who was driven out of her home into the winter and froze to death 127 years ago during this episode. Local furniture maker Connor Bridgman uses the hunt as a chance to make out with his side piece, singing teacher Felicity Hearn. But she runs off after some loud noises, leaving Connor to investigate and to be stabbed to death by a sword. DCI John Barnaby is called to the scene where we will meet his new number 2, DS Charlie Nelson, and they get off to a rough start. They meet the owner of the house, Simon Fergus Johnson, his hard-drinking wife Tabby, and his daughter Pippa, who leads the ghost hunts with her friend Dev. They are all shocked by the murder, but local historian Brendan Pierce quickly points the finger at the ghost. The detectives go and visit Connor's widow Mel, who is shocked, not that he was cheating, but because it was with her singing teacher. She also informs them that Connor was trying to buy the manor house from Simon, but talks had turned acrimonious. Next up is the Blacksmith Arms local pub and the home to the original ghost parties. Pub owner Ross Clymer, who owed Connor money, isn't too thrilled with Simon's horning in on his action. The detectives find some flyers that call for ending the ghost hunts, as well as audio from the manor that evening where a little girl's voice can clearly be heard saying, "You're going to die." Barnaby goes to visit Simon's sister Valerie, who had been the one everyone thought deserved the manor house because she was the one to stay around and take care of their ailing father since she was 13. But he left it to Simon, so tough. She doesn't seem too upset with it, content with her life. She says she didn't take part in the ghost hunt because she is afraid of the ghost stories. Later, Valerie is surprised to find her old beau, Ali Tabori, on her doorstep after he'd been away for several decades. The town seems in a bit of turmoil. Simon and Tabby constantly fight while leaving Pippa on her own to fend for herself. Dev is working on a mysterious PhD dissertation that he won't let anyone see. Brendan's wife Liberty is upset that he is spending money they don't have, and both of them had reason to hate Connor as he toyed with their daughter's heart and caused her to leave town years ago. Oh, and Mel stops off at Felicity's to add some more guilt to her plate. Since they can't identify the killer yet, Barnaby does what any hard-working detective would do. He sends Nelson to the pub to keep an eye on the next ghost hunt. That means Nelson witnesses Ollie's attempt to enter the pub and Ross angrily telling him to leave. Then everyone grabs some special mics and they spread out to hear Rose while they all sit in the dark. Fun?
Yeah.
At his home, John sits with a pregnant Sarah to Netflix and chill an 8-hour security video from the night of the murder. After hours of intense, boring viewing, he sees Ross going into the mansion. He hurries over to the pub where Nelson sees a weird red light moving around in the dark. He then hears the girl's voice telling them to die again and tackles someone who turns out to be Felicity, who had been moving around in the dark and making the little girl's voice. She says she was only trying to help boost the ghost hunt. Barnaby arrives and they all realize Ross is missing. But not for long. They find him murdered in the freezer.
Of course.
Yeah. So, a little bit of tourist info on Morton Shallows.
Yeah. Morton Shallows was named the most haunted village in England in 2003, 10 years before the show was filmed, which is weird since this is its only appearance. If more murders would lead to more ghosts, it's got a lot of catching up to do to get that title back from Badger's Drift. It does have a nice pub, a manor house, some shops, a not very successful tea room, nearby caves, lots of really tacky Christmas decorations, and dueling Christmas ghost walks. 127 years ago, they had a blacksmith who had a daughter who went missing in a snowstorm.
Did you think it was weird that when Barnaby sort of drove through the village, and like every time like you see like you go into the village, there's like literally next to no one?
Well, there was that Santa on the back of the pickup truck.
Yeah, and Brendan dressed as the Santa, but it was like he's like asking, please donate. And like, we've already driven through the village and like, there's nobody here, man.
Like, well,
it's somebody. A ghost town.
It's a ghost town. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I could see if it were Badger's Drift because everybody would have been murdered by this point. But, this is the only time we see this town.
Yeah. So the episode opens with a shot of the manor house in a big snowstorm. And I had to say, it was like, holy crap, there's weather in Midsomer. Like, and I didn't think about it before really, but Midsomer is in England, a land not known for its sunny weather. It's known for its rain.
Yeah.
But we never really see a lot of rain in Midsomer.
We do every so often, but it's rare for a country known for its basically constant rain.
Yeah. So when I see snow in an episode, I'm like, oh my God, they have weather there. And then you don't see snow in any other scene the rest of the episode until the end.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is this was filmed in June and July.
Right.
So, and it's obvious that nobody is really cold. I mean, John Barnaby stands at the door and gives a little shiver, but it's obvious that he's not really cold. But,
Nelson's walking around in like basically a members only jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. They did film one of those Hallmark Christmas movies in my town a few years after I moved here. A really, really bad one, I will say. You will not find it being broadcast anymore. But, they filmed it in October. They had fake snow everywhere. They pulled all the leaves off the tree. And they aired it in December. So at least they gave themselves a little more post-production time on Midsomer.
Was it the one where a woman falls in love with a ghost?
No, it was called The Spirit of Christmas, but the two were in a coma and they became ghosts.
Aw. The big theme to a lot of this is unhappy families. You have the Fergus Johnsons. Simon seems to be a quiet, not overly courageous man. Tabby does not seem that interested in being married at all.
No. She has a little ab-fab going on there with the drinking.
And, considering the amount of times they imply that they are not having sex, and like Tabby just straight out implies that Simon can't perform. So is all their issues just about erectile dysfunction?
They might just be. You could get those little blue pills.
Yeah. I mean, there was that great line, it's like, we're not joined anywhere. But also there was that scene where Tabby, for half a second, thinks Simon might have committed the murder.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, you're hot again. Yeah. You might be a man.
Yeah, that's kind of a little messed up.
Yeah. I liked Tabby though. She was fun.
That was a great character, yeah.
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 And then you had the Pierces, where I think there's a lot more, like, again, or interesting character in Liberty, who is clearly just emotionally shattered by the loss of her daughter and frustrated by whatever Brendan seems to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. She is very much a realist. There are no rose-colored glasses anywhere within her vicinity, and she just is just trying to get through and finding some way to salvage whatever they can out of their lives.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Brendan's like, no, you've got to make money. You spend money to make money. And, oh, you've got to. And it's just like, I mean, it's just like so self-destructive.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad. Like I was getting, I guess, and this is a way, like it's a really well done bit of character work. I was getting super frustrated with him. I was just like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. You really identified with Liberty a lot in that relationship because you could see her frustration.
Oh yeah,
and understand it.
And I think marvelously, like we could talk a little bit when we talk about the actress, but I thought that was marvelously played.
Yeah.
So the strange kills in this episode, not really strange so much. It's a stabbing and a hammering.
Yeah.
So by the way, so the guy who was a prick got stabbed, and the guy who owned a pub got hammered.
Oh, that's funny.
Kind of the framing of it as it was interesting. I thought that they set this up as this is going to be we're framing it around a ghost story, and maybe a ghost did it, but they never really leaned into that at all.
No. They've used the ghost story thing before to better effect. But I think they could have done a little bit more with it. You kind of know instantly that it's not a ghost because you do see that red light in that first murder.
And the night vision goggles viewpoint, which I guess you could play it as, oh, that's ghost vision, but that's also just, they've been using that kind of POV green screen shot for night vision goggles since the Silence of the Lambs movie.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, it's somebody in night vision goggles.
Yeah.
I felt like if they maybe had like kept it a little more, is it ghost or is it not, would have made it stranger. However, when Connor is killed and he falls down in the room full of creepy dolls, and all those toys not only come to life, but half of them seem like they're applauding his death.
Yeah. That was one happy little toy monkey.
He was. For the little girl voice that Felicity sort of brings in and tapes, what did you think of? Whose voice was that?
I wasn't sure if it was her voice mimicking a little girl's, because as a singing teacher, I think she would have to have some range with her voice as far as, what she can do with it. But also she could have said, hey, little girl who I just gave a lesson to, let's do something fun. Can you record the line, you're gonna die?
I think she did. I think she did. I think that's what she did. That girl's voice sounded very similar to. I listened closely on the second time I watched this episode, and it really does sound like the little girl who, no offense to the actor, I'm sure they were telling her to not sing at her best, but the parents probably might have wanted us to spend money on different lessons. But it really did sound like her.
Yeah. It did. Yeah. I just thought it was weird that she would rope this little girl into doing that and recording, you're gonna die.
Do they ever really explain what Pippa and Dev's relationship is? Like, they make out and look like they're going to have sex at one point, but I don't ever recall them saying, oh, this is my friend from university. This is, oh, my buddy. It's just like, no, me and her, we do the ghost hunts.
Yeah, I think he's somebody that she met at uni, as they say in England.
Yeah.
And he saw her, as we will find out in the second half, as an interesting test subject on this gullibility thing that he was doing. And she saw him as somebody that would be a great colleague for these ghost hunts. So I think it may have started as a friendship. They may have been in the same, some classes. And I think she had more affection for him, obviously, than he did for her. But he was obviously using her.
Yeah. And, of course, there's another unhappy, that's another unhappy relationship. And then, of course, you forget the unhappy relationship between Connor and Mel,
Oh, yeah.
which we don't get to see a lot of because we barely get to see Connor at all. He is dead within 2 minutes of there is no real setup to him other than I'm going to use a ghost hunt to make out with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought the character of Felicity was because we don't see her in the second half at all. She is gone after the first half.
Yeah, we really don't. Yeah.
No, she's gone after after they reveal that she is the one who was faking the little girl voice,
Mm-hmm.
which again, no real explanation. It's I was trying to help. Help how? They don't really give her any kind of. I felt bad for the actress. There's no real redeeming anything on a woman, who. But then again, they just is oh, she's a cheater. She's
Mm-hmm.
cheating. She's cheating with the husband over her friend. She's kind of cheating this ghost hunt thing. But I felt like she was someone who was so desperate to try to fit into her new home. And was really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then she gets no ending whatsoever. She's just bye.
Yeah.
Do you want to do some of the cast highlights?
Let's talk about this cast.
All right. Well, Mark Heap played the not super manly Simon Fergus Johnson. Mark is a very recognizable character actor. His first credited screen role was Fire Juggler in the Roger Moore James Bond classic Octopussy. Classic is in quotes. He's appeared in shows like Spaced, Green Wing, Spy, and Happiness, and the films Stardust, The World's End, and just now streaming on Netflix, The School for Good and Evil. And guess what his character's name in that? Professor Manley. So it all comes full circle. Hannah Toynton was our ghost hunting Pippa Fergus Johnson. Hannah has appeared in shows like New Tricks, The Hour, Penny Dreadful, Mr. Selfridge, and Death in Paradise. She will next appear in an adaptation of John Wyndham's The Midwich Cuckoos, which film buffs might know has been previously filmed twice as Village of the Damned, the one with the creepy mind control children. A couple fun facts about Hannah. She met her fiance Joe Thomas on the set of Hollyoaks, and then went on to appear in a few episodes of his cult classic comedy, The In-Betweeners, as his love interest. And she also holds the distinction of playing the 27th person to give birth on Call the Midwife.
There we go.
That was listed as fun facts on her IMDb page.
Well, next we have James Murray, who played Ollie Tabori, which I swear sounds like a character from The Simpsons. His first credited role was at the age of 4 in the show Shoestring, but he really didn't start acting until the late 90s with appearances on Coronation Street and Dr. Finley. He's since appeared in Primeval, Suspects, Cutting It, and most recently in a recurring role on MacDonald and Dodds. He will next appear in Season 5 of The Crown, playing Prince Andrew. Lucky him. Les Dennis played local historian Brendan Pierce. Dennis started his career as a stand-up comedian working in clubs in Northern England. In 1974, he won the ITV talent show New Faces. Apparently, there's this myth that he was almost the first contestant ever to score the maximum 120 points on that show, but had to settle for 119 when one judge only gave him a 9 out of 10. However, the reality is he only scored 111. Since then, he's been a popular presenter and TV comedian who has also acted in a variety of programs, including his own The Les Dennis Laughter program.
Love that. I love that name.
After Midsomer, he did 2 years on Coronation Street. Playing his wife Liberty Pierce is Elizabeth Barrington. Her first credit is the Mike Leigh film Naked, and she would go on to appear in his films Secrets and Lies, Vera Drake, and Mr. Turner. She had roles in The Office, in Bruges, Doctor Who, Nanny McPhee, Alan Partridge, Black Mirror, and Father Brown. Most recently, she appeared in Sanditon, The Nevers, and the second season of The Pact. She gives a strong performance in this episode.
In a show that we've talked about this in the past, where every so often an actor gives a very grounded, real performance in a show that is kind of known for being over the top. And I think she did that this episode. Her performance was as Liberty, as a mother frazzled as dealing with loss, dealing with a husband that is causing them so much destruction. I think she played it perfectly.
I agree. And I think this is where Midsomer really stands out with casting these types of actors who give these types of performances. Yes, they bring in the big names. There isn't a real big name in this episode, but there's some really strong actors.
Yeah. Yeah, solid character performances, and hers. When I saw that she appeared in a number of Mike Leigh films, I was like, yeah, I can see that. She definitely feels like a Mike Leigh style actor.
Yeah.
Susie Trailing was the not-so-grieving widow Mel Bridgman. She's appeared in the Inspector Lindley Murders, The Bill, Casualty, The White Princess, The Dollmaker, and Killing Eve. She also played Ginny Potter in the third and fourth years of the West End run of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Jonah Russell was the blink and you will miss him die Connor Bridgman. He's a bit of a journeyman actor. He's had small roles, Green Wing, EastEnders, The Bill, Doctors. His most recent credits are the film 1917 and the show La Fortuna, the detective show with Stanley Tucci. Perdita Avery played Felicity Hearn. She is primarily a voiceover actor who apparently her agency recently tweeted out congratulations to her for her 300th voiceover work with them. On screen, she's appeared in Father Brown, Hollyoaks, Silent Witness, and Casualty. She was also recently the narrator for the animated show The Brompton Tales and appeared in the podcast The Archers.
So maybe she did do that voice. Dev Kardik was played by Nikesh Patel. This was an early role for him, although he did previously appear in a season of Bedlam. Since Midsomer, his career has really been on the rise. He went on to star in the shows Indian Summers, the updated Four Weddings and a Funeral, Starstruck, and the film Good Grief. Now he's currently starring in The Devil's Hour with Peter Capaldi and Jessica Raine, which is airing on Amazon in the States. I really need to see that one.
Yeah, it's Capaldi, I guess, is playing sort of a Hannibal Lecter type character. Kardak, I think, was interesting, is like he is probably out of all of these actors right now is currently on the hottest streak, as he is the romantic lead in a lot of, in Four Weddings and Starstruck, he is the romantic lead.
Then we have Paul Blair, who played frozen bludgeoning victim Ross Clymer. He's appeared in multiple episodes of Taggart, the show Dear Green Place, the film Outpost, and his most recent credit is Outlaw King. And then we have some return visitors. We have Emily Joyce, who played Valerie Fergus Johnson, the beloved and Reason to Kill. She appeared in the Series 5 episode of A Worm in the Bud. Her first screen credit was on the classic series Cracker, and since then she appeared on all the standards like Doctor Who, The Bill, EastEnders, Casualty, Call the Midwife, and Inspector Lewis. She's probably best known for appearing in the British superhero sitcom My Hero with Ardal O'Hanlon. Most recently, she was in an episode of MacDonald and Dodds. This is our second and probably final time discussing Nadia Cameron Blakey, who played Tabby Fergus Johnson. She also played Penelope Guest in the episode Masterclass, which we just discussed. Before Midsomer, she appeared in the films Tomorrow Never Dies, Batman Begins, and the shows Above Suspicion, The Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and Peep Show. This episode of Midsomer is her last credit on IMDb, as she seems to have retired from acting. And if you follow her on Instagram, you can see the jewelry she designs and cute photos of her dog.
Scotty. And if she comes out of retirement for Midsomer, maybe we'll talk about her again. But this bon voyage, Nadia. You were fantastic in this episode. Tabby was a lovely, slightly nasty piece of work.
She was, and I really enjoyed her in Masterclass as well. She had kind of a Kate Blanchett look to her. And I always thought that here's somebody that I would have thought would have had a bigger career, but apparently it never quite worked for her. And sometimes it just doesn't. It's luck, Yep.
Our village star of the week has appeared in 6 episodes of Midsomer, including this one. Schooled in Murder, Killings of Copenhagen, Dagger Club, Murder by Magic, and Breaking the Chain. In all of these episodes, she played an uncredited background role, the kind that are vital to shows like Midsomer to make it feel more real and in the world. So this week, our star is Pamela Betsy Cooper. She's a professional extra with a lot of uncredited roles in everything from Desi Boys to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation to greatest film of all time, Paddington 2.
I love
Most
Paddington
recently,
too.
who doesn't love Paddington 2? If someone says they didn't like Paddington 2, they're a serial killer.
They are.
And probably will be appearing in Midsomer. Most recently, she's appeared in the British version of the comedy Ghosts. And so we want to say kudos to you, Pamela, for being our village star.
And I think we saw with some of the early COVID filmed episodes how important these roles are. These are people who need to be there. They don't say anything, they walk by, they get a second of screen time, but they're so important for setting the scene. Everything is so controlled on a movie set. Nothing is accidental. So when you see that person walk by in the background, they had to cast that person, get them the right look to them so that they don't stand out enough that you really notice them, but that they are part of this crowd that, it just happens to mill around or is in a shop or wherever they are. They're important to making any show or any movie really grounded. And for the Pamela Betsy Coopers out there, we salute you.
Yeah. 6 episodes, so that ain't nothing.
Yeah. She's doing something right.
Exactly. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back in just a moment with the second half of A Christmas Haunting. And we're back. Let's discuss the second half of A Christmas Haunting.
We're home.
Who's we?
Me and Nelson. Sexy.
Hello, Charlie. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Sarah.
Oh, pleased to meet you. Both.
Oh, didn't John tell you we're having a baby?
Yes. Hasn't stopped banging on about it.
Oh, he's got you lying for him already. Marvellous.
Coroner Kate Wilding informs the intrepid detectives that Ross was bludgeoned to death with a hammer and left in the freezer. Much like Connor's murder, this one is eerily similar to the Rose ghost story. So is this the work of a ghost? No, of course not. Come on, it's Midsomer. Don't ask stupid questions.
Seriously.
Nelson recognized the red light as coming from night vision goggles, so our killer is proficient with close combat kills and high-tech equipment. Could it be the work of Ali Tabori, currently AWOL from the Marines? He would have had motive to murder both men, as they framed him for causing an accident when they were in school that caused Ollie to leave the village, his sister Mel, and his girlfriend Valerie for decades. They sit down and question him, learning that Ollie suffers from PTSD and has returned not for revenge, but for love. Ollie and Valerie's rekindling of their romance is about the only happy love story in the village. Brendan and Libs are at a breaking point over his constant money troubles. Tabby has been less than committed with Simon and feels he isn't man enough to stop her. Dev shares a passionate kiss with Pippa, but has only to stop her from reading his dissertation. The detectives discover that Connor and Ross were on the Christmas appeal committee with Brendan. Now Brendan is the last man standing, so they wonder if he's the next target or the killer. They head over to Liberty's cafe to find him, and she reveals that he is missing. They break down the door to the room where Brendan keeps the Christmas appeal money and find that all the money has vanished. Just as they are about to track him down, Brendan shows back up with vacation tickets and the loudest Hawaiian shirt possible. Turns out he's not the killer. Just really dumb. He wanted to take his long-suffering wife on a trip to see their daughter, so he stole the money. Brendan. Nelson learns that Dev isn't studying parapsychology for his dissertation like he's claimed, so he questions him in front of Pippa, revealing that Dev is actually writing a paper on the susceptibility and gullibility of people to stories of the supernatural. He has been using Pippa as his main subject, and skeptics Connor and Ross had been helping him. Pippa runs off heartbroken. Barnaby realizes he never finished watching all 8 hours of security footage. So he starts it up again, and this time he sees Ross and Tabby in an embrace. Looks like they've been having an affair, which finally gives Barnaby the clue he needs to break the case wide open. He and Nelson head to the Devil's Dungeons caves, where Pippa was supposed to be streaming the final ghost hunt with the help of Ollie. And here we get the reveal. Pippa, suffering from years of neglect from her family, craves normalcy at home in the manor house. She killed Connor because he was trying to take her home away. Then she killed Ross because of his affair with her mother. She used night vision goggles to navigate in the dark and the weapons from the sights to make it look like it was a ghostly affair. She kills the lights in the cave and attempts to murder Ollie to stop him from taking away Valerie, the only person who had ever been there for her. Nelson and Barnaby arrive in time to stop her and save Ollie. In the aftermath, Valerie and Ollie share a kiss and a promise of a hopeful future in the wake of Pippa's arrest. Brendan and Libs, depressed about their future, are surprised by the arrival of their daughter for the holidays. And finally, the Barnabys welcome Nelson and Kate into their home as snow starts to fall, and they wish us all a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So Pippa's motivation, what do we think on this?
She's very selfish because everything was about her. And to be honest, I think Dev was lucky to get away with just being exposed.
I mean, I don't know if I think she's I think she's damaged. I think it's very clear that the relationship of her parents was probably incredibly detrimental, and she was clearly suffering from just wanting a home, just wanting to feel loved, and that's why she was like willing to kill Ollie over Valerie. I think she just really, I think she felt very abandoned.
Yeah, but she did have, even though her parents were always gone and traveling around and, dumped her at boarding school, and then she spent Christmas with her grandfather and her aunt. She had her grandfather and her aunt.
Yeah, that's not a lot. Also,
that's more than some people have. So I just felt she was a bit entitled.
By the way, did you notice that they said that Pippa's belief in the afterlife started after her grandfather's death? And it was like, did she kill her grandfather? We never actually know how. We just assume he died from old age, but
yeah, and chronic ill health. Yeah.
Also, if she's using the ghost hunts, right? Like she supposedly believes in the supernatural and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But if she's using these hunts to kill people, does she really believe?
I would think if she believed and she was a murderer, that she would believe that she would be haunted by their ghosts afterwards.
Yeah.
But then again, she's not the most rational person.
Well, there's that thing at the end where she goes online, like, I'm going to try to create a ghost. And everyone who's watching them going, wait, she's going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
That's how you create ghosts.
She's already killed 2 people and no ghosts showed up after those.
That we know of.
But
I mean, that's just it. It's just like I'm going to create a ghost. It's like, okay, you just confessed to murder. You're going to attempted murder. I mean, there's a point where Dev calls her, you're completely delusional. Like, you're completely delusional.
Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
I think overall for a mystery, like it was a decent whodunit mystery. I feel it's, yeah. I mean, I don't know if Pippa is really in the annals of memorable killers.
No, I did not remember who the murderer was the first time I rewatched. And I kind of don't completely buy her, but again, people kill for all sorts of reasons, and you never know why, and humans are stupid.
By the way, they reused this killer's same motivations for that the first episode of the new season.
Yes.
The steampunk werewolf, where the killer is again killing people who are threatening to take away her home.
Yes.
What did you think of Valerie and Ollie's love story?
I actually liked it. I found it very sweet. Valerie says she's not a saint, which makes you wonder if she was the one who killed the grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Or caused the accident.
But she is a good person. And Ollie comes across as someone who was done wrong, but dedicated, over 2 decades of his life to the military, did his service, is suffering a little bit, but is seeking something more out of his life. I like their relationship.
I did too. Like, love stories aren't really a thing you see a lot in Midsomer. You don't really see 2 people kind of coming together.
Yeah. On
this show. So I thought that was kind of sweet. Very, very holiday-esque.
Yeah.
Holiday-esque for the episode. Although the kiss at the end, when like her beloved niece has just confessed to killing murder and just tried to kill Ollie, and they're like, "Oh, it's snowing. Let's have a romantic kiss." Timing wise, timing people. Also, so they have not spoken or connected in decades, right?
They hadn't seen each other in decades. I don't know if he wrote to her over those years or not. Nothing is ever mentioned.
I got the sense they didn't, just because there was so much surprise. Like, what have you been up to for these last couple of decades?
Yeah.
But I also want to understand, like, they framed him for causing an accident and he had to leave, but he wasn't banished from the town. Why didn't he come back for visits?
I don't know. That
part, like, just kind of jumped out to me. It's just like, why was he like, okay, yeah, like the thing 20 years ago probably sucked and he's been in the military, but you get leave in the military. Yeah. You can, like, I'm wondering if there maybe have been something edited out where he, like, Mel's family forbid him from ever contacting her again, or Mel was like, you stay away because I'm marrying Connor. Yeah. Like, I also kind of feel like Mel at some point should have been like calling Ollie. It's like, hey, dude, Connor's terrible. Come back. Yeah. Like, Mel seemed to hate her husband, but also seemed to hate the fact that Ollie came back. And like, it was just very confusing. Yeah. And Ross's motivation for kicking him out, he's the guy, he was your fall guy. You should bought him a drink. Yeah, Ross was kind of was another jerk. Yeah. Let's take a moment to look at the detective work in this episode, which mostly seemed to be involved watching an 8-hour DVD set of DVDs. That was fun, honey. I'm going to bed now. I was going to stay up and read pregnancy books like you. These videos on regular speed. Yeah. Like, it was very clear, like, if you just, like, even did it like 1.5 speed, you wouldn't miss anything. But yeah, no, I'm gonna sit and watch 8 hours of this on multiple DVDs. Yeah. But then I kind of love that, like, when they get to the one where we see, like, Ross showing up, right? That's when they put the DVD in the tray, and it's like, it's a hit play, but it doesn't start at the beginning. It starts at a point clearly. Someone has also been clearly watching this DVD or stopped it. It just was like a weird thing of just like, that's not really how this stuff works. They need newer technology nowadays, because, man, they're much better cameras now. Yeah, like, no, rewind it back so we can see what's happening. And I was like, you don't need to. You should have just started right. Yeah, should have just started where it went. But obviously, a big part of this episode is dealing with sort of ghost stories at the holidays, which is a British tradition. So, Eileen, for your history corner, do you want to take us through the Christmas ghost story tradition? I will do so. The tradition of telling ghost stories at midwinter dates back centuries in Britain and is referenced in works by Christopher Marlowe and William Shakespeare. Throughout Northern Europe, the winter solstice is the darkest time of the year, and as the family gathered around the fire to keep warm in the bleak midwinter, tales of ghost sightings and local lore of the supernatural were told. The tradition of the ghost story even factored into the Year Without a Summer, which took place in 1816 and caused cold temperatures and incessant rain all through Europe. A group of English writers spending the summer in Switzerland were driven inside by the lousy weather, where they had a little story competition, which ended up being won by Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, obviously. As the printing press increased literacy rates, the oral lore became the written ghost story. In 1843, the most famous writer in the world published a little Christmas ghost story called A Christmas Carol. The short novel not only revived the career of Charles Dickens after 2 major flops, but also of Christmas and the tradition of the Christmas ghost story. A Christmas Carol remains beloved and has been adapted countless times to the stage and screen.
In 1859, Dickens oversaw the December publication of a series of ghost stories titled The Haunted House, with various writers, including Wilkie Collins and Elizabeth Gaskell, taking a particular room and Dickens writing the opening and closing stories. Dickens continued to write ghost stories for Christmas from 1850 to 1867, when he declared that he had murdered Christmas.
You heard it here first, people. Charles Dickens is responsible for the war on Christmas.
Other writers took up the mantle, among them Henry James and Edith Wharton. Henry James's novella The Turn of the Screw, published in 1898, starts on Christmas Eve as a framing story to the classic Gothic story. Afterward is A Christmas Ghost Story, published by Edith Wharton in 1910. The Victorian Christmas ghost story was the hallmark Christmas movie of its time, but without Nicolette Sheridan and Olympia Dukakis. In the 1970s, the BBC aired a series called A Ghost Story for Christmas on Christmas Eve. The first 5 were based on stories created by Cambridge medievalist scholar and famed ghost storyteller M.R. James. The tradition has been revived periodically since 2005, mostly adaptations of more M.R. James's ghost stories. The tradition never took much hold in the United States, probably because the Puritans didn't care much for it, or Christmas, for that matter. After the Revolution, Christmas was considered a bit too British for the new Americans. Washington Irving's The Sketchbook, published serially in 1819 and 1820, brought back many old English Christmas traditions, but it also included the ghost story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. With a large number of Irish and Scottish immigrants, the tradition of Halloween, derived from the Celtic festival of Samhain and the Christian Hallowtide, became more of the time for ghost stories in the U.S. However, you can find a trace of the old Christmas ghost story tradition not only in the myriad versions of A Christmas Carol, but also in the Christmas song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year. Amidst all the caroling and jingle belling, there's the line, there'll be scary ghost stories. So there's always been a little nightmare before Christmas.
Womp womp. Actually, you as you were talking about this, it made me think you could probably make the case that It's a Wonderful Life has a hint of the ghost story in it, in the sense like there's that period where he's technically dead and witnessing what life would be, supposedly witnessing life without him, but also, can't see or hear.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait, but yeah, so you know what I mean? Like, it's just like he is, kind of witnessing that life without them.
Mm-hmm. And Clarence is a bit of a ghostly angel.
He is. This is our first appearance of Charlie Nelson. We've discussed him before, but I think it's interesting to sort of see his introduction. This was coming on the heels of Jones has been promoted to DI, and he is now in Brighton. So a lot of this kind of comes down to Barnaby missing Jones, his buddy, and not sure how to adjust to a new DCI who is himself trying to struggle with Midsomer and a, prickly Barnaby.
He has a new boss.
Yeah.
I like the way their relationship develops through the episode, and that they both come to respect and realize the strengths that they both have.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good introductory episode. There's a little bit of Detective Sergeant Scott at the very beginning where there's the prickly relationship that Scott had with Tom Barnaby, but it's
don't call him Gov.
Yeah, but it does smooth out eventually, and Barnaby tests him and kind of pushes him to see how far he can get away with, and Nelson seems to come through, and he saves the day at the end.
Well, I think Barnaby is just always, especially John Barnaby, has always been a bit more like both Barnabys always threw their weight around when it comes to their subordinates. There's like you go, Troy, go check that pulse. Yeah. But in this one, I feel like this is where they start also mellowing John out just a little bit. He kind of started off and he was a bit more. He was a bit crankier, I think, in many ways. And yeah, Nelson's coming in and like, the gov line and not quite, oh, I didn't get this and missed this, and he missed a couple of things there, and he needs that whole, like, a little tact goes a long way.
Yeah.
But I think the conversion, I think the point where Barnaby shifts is when Nelson, after the murder of Ross, and Nelson is very angry with himself over what he feels was his inability, his failure to do his job properly.
Yeah.
And that's where John takes a more mentoring, like, hey, you did all you could.
Yeah.
You did what I would have done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then Nelson really grows into the role. He starts taking more of an active role in what he's supposed to do, like with contacting the superiors of Ali Tabori to see what's going on with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without John having to tell him.
Yeah. And he also kind of covered for John when Sarah's like, "Oh, you didn't know I was pregnant?" It's like, no. I he talks about all the time.
Yeah. There's an interesting bit in the new In Conversation series that just started on Acorn where they're talking to Neil Dudgeon, and he says, as he's gotten older, he realizes how important it is to have a nice young detective sergeant do all the running around, because apparently he tweaked a knee in a sprint across a field, and he says, I still feel it.
And then we got a nice little kind of the farewell from Jones is a little card that he has mailed to Sykes.
Yes, I thought that was sweet and very Jones.
It was very Jones. It was very sweet.
Yeah.
And we only see him one more time after in the series. But as they said, Nelson has very big shoes to fill.
Yes.
Quick corner. Kate Wilding is our coroner this episode. Doesn't get a lot of flashiness, except she does try to make Nelson feel more at home. Mm-hmm. And by the end of it, she becomes Nelson's landlord.
Yeah. She advocates for him very early on. In the first season, the three of them are together. And she says, he seems very keen. And I think she sees what Tom may not admit to seeing. He may see it, but he's not going to admit to it.
Well, I think she also sees what Sarah quite obviously sees.
Yeah.
Nelson's hot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he is hot.
Speaking of Sarah, let's just jump into the home life. And we had a big reveal at the start of this episode where Sarah shows herself to be pregnant.
Yay.
With a bump. Although I feel like that was something that they kind of announced at the end of the previous season, correct?
I don't recall.
Yeah, but it was a nice reveal of you. Like, he goes, "Were you expecting something?" And she turns around and there's the bump. It was nice.
Yeah.
In real life, Dolman was actually pregnant at the time because when they filmed this, it would have been in the summer, and she gave birth to a daughter in August 2013. So this pregnancy was real. I liked all the little bits where, like, the jokes about naming the baby, but that's also kind of clearly stressing her out that the fact they don't have a baby name.
Yeah. And he's not taking this seriously.
He's not. Bump Barnaby.
Bump Barnaby. I kind of like the name Bump Barnaby.
Nah, they were big on alliteration, but Ben Barnaby was the solution that they came up with at the end, although that's not the name they use when the baby is born.
No, they did name it after the original producer, Betty.
Yep.
And so we have little baby Betty.
Yeah. And then I think probably the most the strangest thing in one of the strangest things in all of Midsomer was the last scene where John is wearing a Rudolph Christmas sweater for the holidays.
They must have had some sort of bet over who would wear the ugly Christmas sweater, and John lost.
I also just feel like this is sort of really cementing him at John is going to be full on dad joke guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like when Betty's 10, she's going to be like, "Dad, stop. Stop. You're embarrassing me."
She's going to have some rough teenage years.
Well, especially how are they going to work her into some of these homicides?
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this episode?
It follows the formula of the first murder at the very beginning, the middle murder, the second murder in the middle, and then the third or attempted third at the very end, as they're, and at this point.
That's the John Barnaby method, is usually John has to come in and try to save, to give it more of an action ending. John has to come in and sort of stop the killer from one last kill.
Yeah. But it works. It's a nice formula. It, mixed up a little bit with the ghost story, which, as we discussed earlier, I think they could have leaned into a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I like it. It's a nice Christmas episode. It's not as good as the first Christmas episode, which was the Ghost of Christmas Past, but I did like it better than Days of Misrule, which was the second one that they did.
I enjoyed it. It's not the strongest mystery. It's a fine mystery. I think because they kind of hinted a lot at the ghost story thing, but then just never developed that at all. That I think the mystery was so. What I really liked was the character stuff. I liked that they gave these some nice character moments, and they gave them happy endings. We saw Valerie and Ollie kind of embracing in the snow, the Brendan and Lib getting their daughter home for Christmas. We didn't see Simon and Tabby. I'm assuming that maybe for Christmas he got some erectile dysfunction pills.
Well, they're probably bailing the daughter out.
Well, they have no money to.
Well, that's true.
But I enjoyed it. It's a solid, I always feel like these BBC Christmas things, they are so hit or miss, as most holiday episodes are. Because a lot of shows, manufacture a holiday episode. I don't know how many sitcoms over the years they've had where is Santa real? Who put these presents under the tree?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this one, I think it's a solidly enjoyable episode.
It is. And like we said, there is no big star name or somebody who really anchors it. There's just a lot of really great character work acting amongst the cast.
Do not dismiss Pamela Betsy Cooper, who has done does as our village star this week for the journeyman work that she has done keeping Midsomer populated.
Yeah. Keeping it real. It real.
Well, that is everything we wanted to talk about. We want to thank everyone for listening. If you had anything you wanted to discuss about a Christmas haunting or Midsomer murders in general, please feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. If you want us to use the email in the show, please just say so in your email. We're also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook and Instagram. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes. It really helps people find us. Also, tell all your friends about us. We're going to be back next month, so we hope you will join us again. And as we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, Christmas can be murder.
And usually is. That was bad. And usually is.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.
Now, this is our second time and probably final time discussing Nadia Cameron Blakey, who played Tabby Fergus Johnson on Welcome to Midsomer.
That's a typo.
Yes.
Oops.
Okay. This is what I get for just mindlessly reading. Okay.